Aloha and good afternoon, everyone. Today's Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024. It's now 2:40 p.m. Will the Committee on Transportation please come to order? I'd like to welcome committee members. We have Committee Vice Chair Cordero by video conference, Councilmember Kiaina, Councilmember Okimoto, and Councilmember Tolba. Also joining us today, we have Councilmember Say. Committee Vice Chair Cordero, in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, please identify each person, if any, who's with you at your location.
I'm alone.
All right, thank you. Pursuant to HRS Section 92-3.7, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up in two ways, in person in the council chamber or remotely via video conference or phone. Each person will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. Persons who are registered to testify in person will be called upon first. When your name is called, please come up to the testifier podium and begin stating your name for the record. Persons who did not register will be given an opportunity to offer testimony following the registered testifiers. And then once in-person testimony is concluded, I'll take testimony from the remote testifiers. When I call your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number, please follow the prompts to unmute and begin by stating your name for the record. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires that all votes at remote meetings be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, if any objections are noted, I'll call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside the council chamber in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audiovisual contact with you, and we cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please notify me if you'll be leaving the meeting, even if only for a short period of time. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. And as a courtesy, please turn off or silence all cell phones for the duration of this meeting. Thank you. I'd like to also welcome Council Chair Waters. And so we'll dive right into agenda item number 1, which is Bill 50. This bill will amend existing ordinances governing parades, street festivals, and other activities, including those in Waikiki, to reduce the strain on the community, first responders, and the public caused by the closure of main public thoroughfares, to ensure that the parades, street festivals, and other activities serve a public purpose, to protect the health and safety of the public, and to establish requirements specific to street festivals for the foregoing purposes. This past second reading and a public hearing was held a few weeks ago. Members, please note that we posted on the agenda a proposed CD1 submitted by Council Chair Waters, identified as OCS 2024-0927, and a summary of the amendments was also posted. We also have distributed to each of you a hand-carried proposed CD1 submitted by Council Chair, identified as OCS 2024-0947. So, Council Chair, if you'd like to summarize the amendments to either, would you like to do that?
Thank you. The amendments are quite lengthy. Could I get OCS to opine? Can I simply refer to what we have here on my desk, or do I have to read them out?
Okay, I think you can summarize it and just sort of describe some of the key areas.
Okay, great. Basically, we're combining the definition of expressive activity and First Amendment activity by establishing the term First Amendment street activity to mean a street activity that is protected under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Add a definition of force majeure event. Replace any term activity with street activity. Amend the definition of Waikiki Legacy street activity. Amend subdivision 1 relating to public purpose to provide that all street activities must serve a public purpose. Amend the heading for subdivision 3 to read non-First Amendment activities. Amend subdivision 4 to provide that any street activity permit conditions imposed by the director must be included in the street activity permit and must not unduly restrict the ability of a street activity participant to engage in First Amendment street activities. Amend subsection 6 to provide that the street activity serving alcoholic beverages, the applicant is required to obtain an appropriate liquor license from the Honolulu Liquor Commission. and that's it.
A lot of changes. So thank you for submitting that. I understand we also have the Director of Transportation Services who maybe has some comments of his own with regard to the bill and some suggested language.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Roger Morton, Director of Transportation Services. In general, we are in support of the bill. We think that particularly the objective of reducing the number of festivals in Waikiki is very important for the community. I think that's the major part of the bill. We do have some comments on the bill. One is that I'm going to note that the bill would cap the number of legacy events as to the number of legacy events that are there right now. We do have a couple of events that are very close to establishing legacy status under current law. And as I read this bill, we would cap the number of legacies to those, and that would preclude them from obtaining legacy status. The couple of technical amendments that we think should be considered. One is to restore the original definition of agency. We recommend it which allows when we provide the other agencies, whether it's HPD or other agencies as appropriate, we seek their comments. This bill would require their approval as well. And we think that the old language is probably preferable. When the term expressive activity, and I know there's a change in here to convert that to First Amendment activity, we don't oppose the nature of that, but we note that the term expressive activity was part of a settlement that we had many years ago, and might want to retain that language just so that we don't change the purpose of the settlement. For the definition of nonprofit, we think it should be adjusted to specify that the nonprofit is a 501c3 rather than just a nonprofit. And to amend the definition of street, we think that the street has the same definition as 15.2-23, but we also think that it should include malls because of other measures we're taking, so that streets should also be amended to include streets and malls. The public purpose, our suggestion was 60%. I did not see the second CD1 from the chair, but that was our recommendation, was that the public purpose be defined as at least 60% of the profit for that. And I think the other last change was that there was a new provision for administrative cost recovery for applicants that submitted multiple applications. We've tried to figure out how we would administer that and haven't come up with an easy way, so we recommend that provision not be included in the bill. Happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions for the Director? Chair Waters.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your hard work on this measure. Your office and my office have gone back and forth, as well as Corporation Counsel, and we're really, really close. So what I tried to do based on our last conversation is we rewrote the whole thing to try to make it more understandable. It appeared that the ordinance had been revised a few times, which actually the way it read was kind of confusing. So the new committee draft that I'm proposing is an effort to make it more understandable. All the suggestions that you are making today, I've got no problem with it. I did receive phone calls regarding the legacy status, so I'm simply suggesting on page 3 delete the amendment, which would read, and had obtained legacy status as of the effective date of the ordinance. I think if we remove that, that solves that problem. And then I'm just curious if your committee chair has an opinion about page 5. Well, I'm looking at page 5 for the CD1, whether or not we want to include on the top of the page subsection B, where we would actually allow or mandate that a portion of the proceeds go to the Waikiki Business Improvement District or the Waikiki Beach Special Improvement District. It's very novel, a very novel idea. I put it in there because I do believe that both Waikiki Business Improvement District and the Waikiki Special, and the Waikiki Beach Special Improvement District are laudable organizations. But I'm open to what the committee feels on those two matters. But otherwise, thank you, thank you, Director, for your input and hard work on this matter.
Thank you. Members, any other questions for the Director? Okay, seeing none, Director, please stick around because I'm sure there will be lots of questions that come up after public testimony. And to that point, I'd like to call upon the testifiers in person on this bill, starting with Mark Tyrone, followed by Sarah Worth and James Barhall. If you could hit the right side button. There we go.
Thank you. Aloha, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Mark Tyrone, and I am a longtime artist manager and event producer here on Oahu. I've produced approximately 20 street festivals in Chinatown, the first one being in 2008 with the Mardi Gras event there, and I also founded the Honolulu Festival, which we did our 13th Honolulu Festival in 2022. And I'm here to strongly oppose Bill 50. Today, though, to focus on the process. After the second reading, there were substantive changes made to the language, as we've discussed, as already been discussed. And 6 days' notice is not enough to process those changes, understand them, and give citizens an opportunity to testify. These events, this bill is going to have dramatic impacts on businesses, workers, and citizens around the island. And so therefore I urge the City Council, the Transportation Committee to defer this and make a decision on the bill later on. I'd just like to highlight a few things. One example of there's some of the vagueness in the bill coming into today's hearing is there's a requirement about needing to be a 50c3 was added to the language of the current version. And someone from the Chinatown Neighborhood Board contacted one council member and was told, well, that wasn't intended and that will come out before, if this makes it to a third reading. And I communicated with a different city council member and was told the opposite. So it's hard to notify the community. A lot of people look to me since for many of these events, I've been the face of the events. And so they're looking to me for guidance. To give an example of the impact on these events, Chinatown has been, since the pandemic, and even before that, has been going through a dip. And unfortunately, that dip's prolonged because a lot of the business that traditionally would go to Chinatown comes from downtown. So workers that go to downtown, a lot of them have free parking or they've taken a bus and they're already downtown. And then for lunch or after work, they walk over to Chinatown and meet up with friends and support the businesses in Chinatown. I don't have the official numbers, but it seems like downtown population has decreased by about 50%. So that's huge loss of business to Chinatown, and there's no sign of that coming back anytime soon. And so with that perspective, Honolulu brings about $500,000 a year to Oahu, and with a large portion of that being directly to Chinatown. That's the direct revenue that the event spends in Chinatown, and that people that come into Chinatown spend in the local restaurants and bars and other establishments. So to lose that revenue in such a challenging economic time is significant, and that's just one event. So for those reasons, again, I urge the committee to not move this bill forward today. I did want to talk to some things that Director Morton brought up, and if that's okay, I'll just touch on them quickly, or
Just, well, members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, if you could just summarize really quickly about those points, I think that would help us figure out our discussion as we begin our discussions.
Sure. So one is the 501c3 issue. My understanding that's tied to public purpose, and with it, I was involved in litigation with a prior permit, and it seemed that Corporation Counsel relied on a U.S. Supreme Court decision that set the bar very low to satisfy public purpose, much lower than requiring to be a 501c3. A mall in America, totally private operation, and the city condemned land and did eminent domain and forced homeowners, property owners, to sell their land at a specific price. And the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that that was fine, even though none of the money went to a nonprofit. And that has been the law of the land for public purpose for a long time. So to set that bar so high of a 501c3 seems unnecessary, and it's also problematic. In addition, let's see, the 60% that Director Morton brought up, the same argument. 60% is a huge commitment. These events have high risk. I was talking to the director of the Honolulu Marathon, and his words are exactly like mine. Honolulu cost $250,000 in 2022, and it's very uncertain whether you're going to get that money back. And then to impose a requirement like that would make most of the festivals go dark.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Up next, we have Sarah Worth and James Barhall.
He's tall. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for letting me testify today. My name is Sarah Kim Worth, and I am on the Waikiki Neighbor Board, but today I testify for myself. And I want to make something very clear about Bill 50. Bill 50 does not decrease the number of street closures in Waikiki. It does not decrease the number of street closures. And the whole reason this bill is being brought forward is because of a safety issue, right? Streets are closed, people get backed up, fire, HPD, they can't reach the citizens. And they're saying that, okay, so we're gonna decrease it to 6 street festivals by 6, and then we'll have 6 more parades. However, I actually did some research about this. So I looked at the street festivals to see what they were blocking off. They are only blocking off 2 hotels. One of the hotels actually has access by going across the street, the Ala Moana Surfrider, because the building has an underground garage. The other residences and hotels have side streets. So HPD fire, they would still have access via those avenues. And parades, they go for over a mile. And they say that, oh, they're a shorter amount of time, so it's not an issue. However, you'll see that with staging, it does become an issue. And the biggest thing I'm seeing is that I'm not hearing anything from HPD Fire saying, if this is truly a safety issue, this is truly about our roads being open, then I would ask that this committee defer this bill until we actually hear from HPD and Fire. Because from my research, I'm not seeing the safety issue being in favor of parades over street festivals.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Ms. Worth? Okay, seeing none? Okay, seeing none. Up next is James Barhall.
Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. I'm Dr. James Barhall. I'm the president of the Honolulu Marathon Association since 1987. And first, I'd like to thank the City Council for your support over the years. Mr. Morton, the Department of Permitting and Transportation. It's been incredible, the support we've had. As a brief overview, we are strongly in support of this bill. I won't go into all the details right now, but we think it's a great bill and very important for the community and Honolulu. The only thing that we're opposed to, and I think Chair Waters, thank you so much for already mentioning the grandfather thing. That's the only problem for us, and it pertains to our half marathon, the Hapalua. It's the second largest sporting event in Hawaii. It'll be about 10,000 people from all over the world. Economic impact's about $30 million a year. We'll be having our 16th year this April, which normally would mean we'd be grandfathered in after 15 years, but because of COVID, we were not able to put on the event for 2 years. So this will be our 14th year. And it's difficult because of the huge investment in events of this scope. A lot of the money and the planning has been spent and done way before the lottery period. So this is very important to us, that we know far in advance that we have a permit. We've never had any trouble getting the permit, but it's been stressful. But again, thanks to the great support of the city, we've always been able to put on this event. So again, we're strongly in support of the bill. And thank you so much again, Chair Waters, for commenting on the grandfather legacy portion of this bill. Thank you.
Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay. Seeing none, is there anyone else in the chamber who'd like to testify on this? I see Rick Agid coming up. And then anybody else, if you could line up on the side following Mr. Agid.
Good afternoon, Chair. I apologize. I thought I registered, but maybe I didn't push the right button in the end. But anyhow, thank you very much. I represent the Waikiki Improvement Association. We're in strong support of Bill 50. And as Mr. Barahal just mentioned, the only concern we had in the draft was capping the legacy events. And I think that's something that we can hopefully work out as this bill progresses if there's any need there. But I think it's important that these major events like the Hapalua, for example, that we don't inadvertently change something in a bill like this that causes consternation there. The main thing that we support in this bill is creating the new category of street festivals. Street festivals are very different in terms of how they affect Waikiki than parades and sporting events because of the long time that they close a major portion of the street from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to midnight. And that end result is very difficult for transportation in and out of Waikiki. And so we'd like to see those limited to a number of events that is more manageable. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? For the record, you're on the remote list, but we're happy to see you in person, as always.
I did that by accident, sorry.
All right, any other in-person testifiers on Bill 50? All right, Angela, come on up.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES. Wishing to comment. So the board rejected this proposal and it's now being proposed to the City Council. As an active attendee of the Waikiki festivals and parades and street activities, such as the Ohana Day Parade, where there are teams of churches setting up the stage for festivals, and as I witnessed the stage being set for the Spam Festival and stages sponsored by the Nahoku Hano Hano, it's a very vibrant, culture in Hawaii to have parades and festivals to set the stage to learn about Hawaiian culture so the audience can talk about it with their friends. But I do foresee problems occurring which should have statutory parameters to provide guidelines and act as mandates to protect from public health and public safety concerns, such as noise interference. It could be a minor noise complaint or very loud noises caused by music and bands. Also, overcapacity causes interference with corporations and businesses. So a specificity and a mandate to put it into law as a specific, like First Amendment street activity, I think that's a bold move. The First Amendment does set the stage to protect the rights to assembly and to express views through protest. However, the government and the police are allowed to place certain restrictions if it interferes with public health and safety concerns.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you. There being nobody else in the chamber clamoring to come on up, we're going to turn to remote testifiers. Going in order of registration, we have Ross Isukane, followed by Greg Masakian.
Hello, committee members. Ross Isokane, downtown Chinatown resident in opposition due to the island-wide rules that may hurt our neighborhood's legacy events and our revitalization efforts. So Eddie Dowd of Hawaii News Now actually did a piece that somewhat related to this topic almost exactly 1 year ago for Hullabaloo 2023, a key event in our neighborhood. And bear with me, I'll quote, "One of downtown Honolulu's biggest event of the year will not happen due to a permitting issue. And many bar owners say it will cause a major drop in revenue." 1 year later, as Yogi Berra once said, it's like deja vu all over again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to Greg Misakian, followed by Rick Schneider.
Okay, sorry, I'm just getting my, I had to click on something to get logged in. So, bear with me. Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Greg Misakian, and I am speaking as an individual. For full disclosure, I am a member of the Waikiki Neighborhood Board. I stand on my written testimony and would like to add an additional comment. It appears that the opposition to Bill 50 is growing, which I think is the result of more people learning what it really says and would do. An example of that is what Ms. Worth said earlier, as far as how many these street festivals would actually be reduced, or parades, or whatever you want to call them, events. I do see that in the written testimony submitted for today's committee meeting, there are 6 opposing, 3 supporting, and 1 with comments. Of the 3 that support the bill, 2, in my opinion, have a conflict of interest. My suggestion is to bring this back to the Waikiki Neighborhood Board for a discussion. We haven't seen Council Chair Waters in a long time, and we would like to see him. And maybe we can get the public's thoughts and inputs to this revised version of Bill 50. And I do want to again stress that fairness in this process is important. Another testifier indicated that, you know, there's been some substantive changes and only 6 days to review. I didn't actually realize that there were that many changes. Also, I've been busy with other things. So mahalo for your consideration. Always pass bills that are fair for the public.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, hearing none, thank you. We will now move on to Rick Schneider, followed by Jasmine Mancos, and then Bob Finley.
Chair, the testifier is not online.
Oh, I see. Okay, so we'll skip Rick. Up next will be Jasmine. And if Rick gets on, we'll get to him. But Jasmine, please proceed.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Aloha, council members. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my testimony today. I am strongly opposed to this bill. I am a bar owner in Chinatown, and as Mark Tyrone said, the not being able to have these events affects us in a huge way. I think he said there was over $1 million that just didn't go out into the economy last year because Hullabaloo didn't happen. And our neighborhood is struggling. We struggled through COVID. We just had an extended neighborhood-wide power outage in June. And we really depend on these nights to bring people out to our neighborhood, to showcase a place that maybe they wouldn't normally check out. And just to bring the money in, not just to the bars, not just to the venues, but also the restaurants and the shops and the art galleries down here. Like I said, these festivals are really huge opportunities to get new folks to come down and enjoy our neighborhood. As the bill is currently written, I think it leaves a lot of confusion and unanswered questions that will have huge real life implications for small businesses like my own and like dozens of others in Chinatown who do support street festivals.
Okay, members, any questions for the testifier? Oh, Chair Waters.
I thank you, Jasmine, and I want to thank the other folks from Chinatown who are testifying. I really do want to clean up the measures so that it doesn't affect Chinatown. The idea is if we limit the amount of street festivals in Waikiki, we hope to actually push the remaining ones to Chinatown. And I do support having more festivals in the Chinatown area. So appreciate your testimony today, but that really was the purpose of this bill. I don't represent Chinatown. I believe our chair of transportation here represents Chinatown. I do represent Waikiki. So my intent is not to affect Chinatown. So in fact, we want more festivals in Chinatown. So thank you for your testimony today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to Bob Finley.
Aloha, Chair and members. I'm Robert Finley, a longtime Waikiki resident. I am firmly in support of Bill 50, CD1, and improvements to that bill. Basically, my concern is every time these events happen, vehicle and pedestrian traffic is heavily impacted. Coelho Avenue as well as Alawai become backed up, and pedestrians, including those using ADA devices, face challenges crossing side streets when the city adjusts traffic lights along Coelho. I've even seen frustrated people jaywalking due to the long delays in the crosswalk lights. HFD responds to about 200 emergencies a month for medical emergencies. During these events, it must be a real challenge for them to get to where they need to go. And I'll leave it to the visitor industry to make their testimony on this, but I am concerned that we have too many events, too much of an impact on the residents, and I hope we can make this a separate Waikiki issue and not a Chinatown issue. Thank you for your concerns.
Thank you, members. Any questions for Bob Finley? Okay, seeing none. Clerks, is there anyone else waiting to testify? Is that Tim Gary's number I see?
Chair, we don't see anybody's. Oh,
Yeah.
Chair, there is a hand
Oh.
that was just raised.
All right. Phone number ending in 175.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Tim Gary. I'm strongly support Bill 50. I don't understand the confusion. This bill was intended to correct the street closures in Waikiki, and somehow it's been diverted to where other areas of the island are concerned. We're in strong support of Chinatown have as many festivals and parades as they want. Our concern is on Kalakaua. It's closed so many times. You don't have parades in Chinatown like we have in Kalakaua. We need to spread these parades around. King Street in front of the Hale, Kapolei. We're willing to share the joy with the rest of the island. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? All right, hearing none. Clerks, is there anyone else waiting remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none. In that case, members, we are in discussion. To frame our discussion, what I'd like to do is I think it's abundantly clear from the testimony that that we're making progress, I think, on the bill, but there are still a number of details that need to be worked out. And to Tim Gary's point about dealing with Waikiki and then dealing with the rest of the island, I think that there's still work that needs to be done to kind of iron out those things. I mean, I think that we're all kind of in agreement about the issues that Waikiki residents have faced, the desire for downtown and Chinatown to have its share of events and what those events look like, and then the rest of the island as well. To Mr. Gary's point, you know, every neighborhood deserves events that spread a little bit of joy within reason. Not too much joy, though. Is there any discussion on this bill? Chair Waters.
Could I ask Director Morton to clarify one thing, Chair?
Yes, of course.
Oh, terrific. In your testimony earlier today, you talked about the public purpose and the 501c3. Can you be specific as to where you are making that suggestion? Like on the, and have you been able to see my most latest draft?
I have not seen the latest draft, but I saw the earlier draft. Just to clarify, there were two routes that could be used to come forward under the bill. If you were a 501c3, then you were the presumption was that you provided the benefit and you didn't have to show any other public purpose. There was an alternative route if you were a private promoter that you could apply, but then you would be held to demonstrating that the event that you had proposed had a public purpose in it. And the way the ordinance reads currently is that any private benefit must be incidental to the public purpose. What the bill tried to do, and what we have done administratively, is that we have defined incidental to the public benefit to meaning more than half of the benefit, the public purpose benefit must be. Now, in the Waikiki example, the promoters there have donated to 501c3s, and we have accepted that as meeting the public purpose for the bill. The streets are the public streets. They are they're the people's streets. They must, there are certain things principles that go along with those, and one is that we don't treat the streets to just monetize the streets and have them as another venue unless there is a public purpose for doing that. And that's our job, is to try to root out whether the events are public purpose. I'm a big supporter of almost all of these events, but I have to weigh the impact that they have on others, whether they be people that want to, get through, go to an event in Waikiki when one of these events happen. I would like to just, we have looked at what we are going to do, what we have already done for 25, for calendar year 25. We have 11 street festivals that we will permit under the existing law. Under the current law, that would be reduced to 6, 3 legacy and 3 non-legacy events. So there will be a reduction of events, despite what the testimony of some people were in Waikiki. And the focus on legacy only applies to Waikiki. There is no legacy requirement for other than Waikiki, and that's because we have recognized long time ago in the ordinance that Waikiki has it's a special district, but it also has tremendous pressures put on it because it is Waikiki. And so the legacy event, legacy definition it only applies to the Waikiki Special District.
The public purpose standard, is that something that has been a long-standing way for you to decide whether or not to grant these permits, or is that something that you'd like to be included in the bill?
I think it clarifies it to include it to the extent that we can. And again, under the way that the bill is worded right now, when the bill says 50% or 60%, that's not of the cost of the event. Those are all not included in that. It is the profit that is made from the event after expenses have been taken off from the revenue. So that's I think there was some that may have misunderstood what that meant, but the percentage to determine by our view of what whether it meets a public purpose is whether there is some amount, but that amount is only on the surplus after expenses have been determined, and those are reported to us after the event.
And that purpose, that area or that requirement only applies to the Waikiki events, or did you want it to apply to every single street activity island-wide?
That's a policy question for the council. Currently, we have applied that to the Waikiki events, but it is a policy question, for the council. I think that the Waikiki events, again, are special because of the number of people, the ability to have an event and to have, not 8,000. Sometimes we'll have 20,000 people in an event. So there's different pressures in Waikiki, and there's different economic realities within Waikiki that are not present in other parts of the island.
Would you have an objection if we're to amend the bill to say that this only applies to Waikiki, the portion where where a portion of the profit goes to the nonprofits that I discussed in the bill?
I would not have an objection to that. I would defer to CORE to determine whether there was any discrimination in that type of thing. But myself personally, I think Waikiki is a special place because of the large density and numbers of people, the number of visitors, and the limited amount of streets and the impact that these events have.
Okay, and then lastly, turning to the last page, this ordinance takes effect on January 1st, 2025, and applies to permits issued for the 2026 year and thereafter. Is that still applicable?
Yeah, that would be applicable. We could not, we're already in the process of completing our permits for 25, so those are sort of done. But 26 would be a viable date.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? I just have one question that hasn't been addressed by Chair Waters' questions. This is about the liquor controlled area. I wanted to get the department's sort of take as to why the department feels that this is important and what issues this solves that have occurred in the past, if any.
Well, it's a question of public safety. It's a question of crowds. In some events, I don't have any objection, to be honest with you. But if the density of people is cheek to jowl and there's open liquor on the streets, I think it can result in public disorder. It can result in fights. It can result in other issues like that. Our view was that a liquor-controlled area are less likely to result in that. But I'd also, look to to the HPD too, who deals with the issues of rowdy behavior or other types of disorder more than my department does, really.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Councilmember Say.
Dr. Martin, excuse me, Director Martin. Is it true that for a lot of these street activities in Waikiki, that when the event takes place, the promoter is the one that sells all the street vendors? Can you explain that to me?
That's true. The promoters, it is a money-making endeavor for the promoters. I'm not going to say that there aren't lots of people that enjoy these street festivals, because there are. There's a lot of people that like to get involved in these street festivals. So for me, it's a balance. While the promoters do make money on it, I think the issue for the department is the impact that the activities have, and just trying to have a reasonable number of these things. We're not outlawing them, but the comment too, on the parades. Our view on the parades are that they are closed segment by segment and they're open segment by segment. So while they're long, the impact on cross streets is more limited than that. And while the access off Kawakawa is only a couple of business establishments, and I agree with that, the impact is the impact it has on regional transportation within Waikiki, and that can be severely impacted by long duration closures of Kawakawa.
So if we're addressing Waikiki, why would it not be much more appealing by having a lot of these street festivals at the end of Kalakaua Avenue, which is Kapilani Park? We don't, stop the traffic. That's my point. And at the last hearing, there was a lot of individual organizations who came out and testified that for those businesses that are on Kalakaua, they are the losers in these street festival activities because people will not be going down to their restaurants, their businesses, etc. So I'm just trying to figure out how you can try to balance it. Parades is very simple, right? It's about a 2-3 hour from, let's say, Ala Moana to Kapilani Park. Street festivals, you start off at 2 in the afternoon and get through by 10. Hey, that's a long time. And other activities, could you expand for me? What are the other activities? Is it the races like the Honolulu Marathon, Hapalua, because they're quick?
There are athletic events like the Honolulu Marathon. There are other, street races that occur there that are, like you say, they're pretty quick. Other activities? With races? Yeah, but they're quick, and again, I've heard that restaurants get impacted. That's not my portfolio. My portfolio is transportation, and that's where I focus.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, it's the chair's inclination, and I guess this is time for a formal recommendation that we defer this bill to the next Transportation Committee meeting on November 19th. That action on the bill be postponed until November 19th, 2024 to let us continue working on this. I think that, we've aired a number of these issues and hopefully we'll be able to come up with something that makes sense for Waikiki, makes sense for downtown Chinatown, makes sense for other parts of the island, and hopefully we can
Chair, don't forget your Kaka'ako area too.
Ah, yes, Kaka'ako, there's street festivals there. I see Vice Chair Ki'aina, maybe out in Kailua, maybe out in Kapolei and the west side, and maybe in Mililani as well. And I think we need a policy that makes sense for the entirety of the island, and there's lots of community groups with lots to offer to folks in the community. So, are there any objections to the recommendation to postpone to November 19th? Okay, hearing none, so ordered. We'll move on to agenda item number 2, Bill 44, CD1. This bill relates to traffic safety and establishes more appropriate speed limits on certain streets. This was introduced by myself and Council Vice Chair Ki'aina. We do have 2 proposed CD2 amendments, one submitted by Council Chair Waters, identified as OCS 2024-0934, and the other submitted by myself, identified as OCS 2024-0930. Let's see, Chair Waters just stepped out, but the amendments again are on the agenda. My amendments are fairly technical in nature, and understand that Chair Waters' amendments would include reducing the speed limits around schools to 15 miles an hour. We have with us the Director of Transportation Services, Roger Morton, and also representative from HPD, I understand. So we'll let Director Morton go first. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Roger Morton, Director of Transportation Services. We support this bill. We think that that other localities that have had speed restrictions have shown reduced crashes and injuries. There's a few things. 15 mile per hour on besides some schools on major roads. I probably within the bill, I think I have the discretion to have higher speed limits on certain streets, and probably would. But in general, we support the bill.
Okay, members, any questions? Vice Chair Ki'aina.
Thank you for that. You know, given the fact that Chair Waters has proposed 15 miles, I guess I wanted to know your thought on it. And the reason being, it's something, of course, I had considered myself, but I did receive concerns because a lot of the schools sometimes are not just in residential communities, they're on major thoroughfares. So my first question is, what are your thoughts on the 15 mile per hour amendment? And second, just overall on the, should this measure move forward, is it, is it automatic or is it at the discretion of DTS to determine which school? And I guess then lastly, what happens if a school says, say if the 15 miles was adopted, they said, no, we want the 20 miles per hour. I guess I'm trying to think about, number one, whether we should lower it, and number two, the practical implementation of it.
Yeah, 15 is a pretty slow speed. And I do have the, I think this would become, as I read the bill, this would become the default. And I do have the authority to have other than the default by taking an action to amend the schedule to provide for a higher speed in an area. Personally, I would opt for the 20 miles per hour and would think that that would be an adequate speed limit by schools. And then again, on major streets, I think that, we would take a look at whether 25 miles an hour was reasonable or whether a slightly higher speed, depending upon the street. If we're talking about major arterial streets, I think that 20 miles an hour is a pretty slow speed for a major arterial.
So again, going back to my question, I just want to make sure, are you saying that it's not uniform then, it would be dependent on the school?
No, it would be dependent upon the director.
But with the director, I guess I'm asking, and it's in the say the ordinance, if it was enacted into law, do you apply a uniform process across the board, or how does it work?
Well, we would look at the type of street and the classification of the street. Many streets are interior and they're smaller streets by schools, and that's one thing. Other streets are like Kapiolani Boulevard, they're more larger streets, and we would look at the classification of the street. We'd look at if there were particular safety issues that jumped out that could be controlled by speed, we would look at those. In general, I think 20 is plenty.
Okay, so again, it's not automatic then. You need to determine for each school whether or not you're going to trigger the 20 miles per hour?
No, I would need to determine whether or not I would change the default. The default would be whatever's in the bill.
Yes. So, okay, then it's not discretionary. You will be mandated to default to 20 miles per hour for all schools. Is that correct?
15 or 20, correct.
Yes, dependent on that.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'll hear Chair Waters' proposal. I'm a little concerned because I don't know if 15 miles per hour, I think it could be appropriate for some schools, but not all schools.
I would agree with that. And I would point out the bill does establish a 15 mile per hour speed zone that's not included in current ordinance. And so that does give the department another tool to use in an area where 15 miles per hour could be appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Director Morton. Thank you for coming and sharing your views on this. And I do appreciate that you stated that in some cases it's not reasonable, because I think that's kind of been my concern in looking at the speed limits rates that have been proposed to us. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you have the discretion to then go and decide.
Well, we would do that through a engineering analysis. Let me make it clear that while it says the director usually wants to make sure that we do it with science.
Well, that's where I was heading towards. How would you determine this? There's numerous amounts of schools on this island, and and I've come to you guys before, and I've expressed my district specifically in Mililani. There's a part where it's considered a residential area, but there's 3 or 4 lanes going up Mehua Parkway, and for me, it's not reasonable to then lower. And I don't want to ever sound like I'm not trying to be responsible or safe, being safety-minded. However, I do think that moving forward, we have to be reasonable and realistic and find some kind of common sense approach to what we're doing. And I appreciate Council Vice Chair's Keaina's statement on certain areas, certain schools, it may not make sense. But I do want to just state that, because as we're going through this process, you would have to hire an engineering firm then to decide which areas would be most suitable for the lower speed limits, which ones won't, and how long would that take? What would this cost? How reasonable are we in trying to implement something like this, while, in my mind, trying to be reasonable and realistic?
Yeah, if it was a large-scale study, then we would hire a consultant. But I do have a very Akamai engineering staff within the department that usually for isolated or smaller scale, we would rely upon our in-house staff.
Thank you, and I agree. You do have a very Akamai team with you, and so I appreciate that. This other question might not be for you, but I've posed it before. It might be for HPD. I do have questions about how is this going to be enforced. I don't know if pure signage is going to solve the speed limit problem in any of our areas. And while it does sound nice to say we lower the speed limit, we put up signs, HPD's for it, apparently it's not. Whatever we have up right now, it doesn't seem to be, we can't, with our shortage of police officers, we can't enforce the current speed limits. How are we then going to ensure that this will be enforced? I just don't want to put things forth so that we look good, but it's not, again, reasonable, realistic, and enforceable.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll probably ask that to HPD when they come forward. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Chair Waters.
Thank you so much. Signage plus enforcement is a key element to reducing speeding and influencing people's behavior. But Director, I got a question for you. And by the way, I'm happy to support Bill 44 as proposed by Councilmember Keaina and the Santos-Tam. But do you have the discretion or ability in certain instances to set the speed limit at 15 miles an hour? Because if we don't need to put this in statute or ordinance, I'm happy to take it out. But can you, in certain instances, make the speed limit 15 miles an hour?
Well, the bill we have speed zones that are within the ordinance, and the bill would establish 2 new speed zones. One would be 15 miles per hour, and one would be 40 miles per hour. Those go along with our 25, our 30, our 35 mile per hour zone. So it would provide us the tools that we don't have now for 15 miles per hour. And that would be a positive thing. I'm very much in support of that part of the bill that would give the department just a ability to do fine grain. And there are areas that we would recommend and establish 15 mile per hour zones if they were allowed within the ordinance. The ordinance is very prescriptive. It's based on street widths right now to determine it. And I think that adding the additional 15 mile per hour zone would be a very positive thing, and my engineers could deal with that.
Oh, thank you, because I trust you to make that determination. And in particular, Holy Nativity School in Aina Haina, where we've been dealing with speeders there for years. Interestingly, on the first day of school, we get the police department out and people actually slow down. But once we leave, they go back to going fast again. And I know what it is, just people in a hurry to get to work. They're stopping by at the coffee shop there to get their coffee and then get back on Kalanianaole Highway. So it's not appropriate for everywhere, but certainly in some instances it is. And to the extent that you could help us craft this bill to allow you the discretion, that would be great. So thank you. Thank you to the introducers as well. I think this is a great bill.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I have one question. Within the bill and actually within the existing ordinance, there's a number of higher speed limit categories, 45, 50, 55, 65. I was able to get copies of these schedules, and almost all of them pertain to, the major interstates. Who sets those speed limits? Do we have any discretion? Because it's in the schedules, but it seems based on what's in the schedule and like driving around and looking at the signs, they don't match up.
State roads are set by state.
So in that case, is there any need for these higher speed level categories in city ordinance?
I think we have one street at 45. We have one street at 45 miles per hour. The higher limits are probably not really necessary for municipal operations.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. Okay, members, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Director. I see we have HPD.
Good afternoon, sir, and committee members. My name is Michael Campbell. I'm currently assigned to the Traffic Division of the Honolulu Police Department. We support this bill, any measures that will keep our community safe, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, members, any questions? Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, and it's posing the same question that I presented prior. How does the department plan to enforce? Currently, we all live in areas where there's schools, and with the shortage of officers, how do you guarantee that you can enforce the lower speed limits if what we have in place now is not necessary? I mean, unless you park a police car at every school zone area, how do you plan to address this?
Well, we usually address it by need, and what I mean by need is when people have complaints in the area of speeding, we can ask the district to address it. There's 8 different districts on the island, and that encompasses every part of the island. And depending on the need, that it may be something that the district, the patrol officer on that beat can handle. And that could be done through education. That can be done through giving warnings. That can be done through community policing style events where we get community members out there to wave signs, encourage better driving practices. It could be done through legislatures like yourself coming out to help get that message across. And finally, we can do that through enforcement, through speed enforcement by administering a penal summons to either mail in the fine or to show up to court and contest it. So those kind of things can be addressed within the district. And then, of course, me being from Traffic Division, we also have specialized teams that go out and address speeding, excessive speeding, racing, things that the community truly has a concern with, but may be bigger than the patrol district can handle.
Thank you. And I do want to, you mentioned the community policing teams. I really am grateful for those that are in my district. And they do a wonderful job. I've been out there with them on multiple occasions, holding up signs so that the community know. And I think that's a great source, a great avenue to capitalize on. And you mentioned education, which that's very important. I was curious to know, when you get reports in, are they coming from the schools that are affected by the speeding in the area, or is it by residents? Because I would like to know how many. I mean, you might have the statistics, but what areas and what's the statistically, what percentage are you guys spending? How many calls are you guys getting? Or how many complaints? And is it from the school, or is it from people that are just witnessing it? And do we have numbers on how many? And I will say that up at the school where my daughters were attending, the elementary school, there were kids who got hit by, on their bikes or walking. So I understand the importance of this. I'm just trying to understand how we can, again, reasonably address the issues. Is it the school turning in the complaints, or is it just the community, or your officers are out there and they're seeing things?
So to answer your question, complaints come from everywhere. So they come from the schools, they come from the mayor's office. There's so many avenues for our community members to address a concern. Some come through HPD, through our general mailbox. Some come electronically. Some people choose to show up at the police department's door to file a complaint. The avenues are so vast for how they make their concerns known that there's no way to keep track of things. But what I can tell you we do is we do keep logs of what we address. We do keep stats of how we address things, whether it was a sign waving event, whether warnings were given, whether enforcement happened, those kind of things we do track in traffic division. Whether the patrol districts track them independently, I'm not sure. That's the discretion of each patrol district. But to address the broad sense, yes, each concern is always entertained. We do look at it. We formulate a plan of action, and depending on what the need is how we address it.
Thank you. Final question.
Of course.
And in your reports, and when you go and you address, concerns being brought to the department's attention, and you go out there, I'm trying to get, again, a reasonable speed limit that we can say, okay, this is reasonable. This will keep the keiki safe as they're walking, or pedestrians, or even cars on the road, that they're not going to be put into a safety hazard area. What would be a safe or reasonable number, and at what speed were most of these accidents or these unfortunate incidents that somebody got hurt? What was the speed limit for that, or what speed were they driving at that for those instances where someone may have been hurt or potentially hurt?
That's a difficult question to answer. I can recommend that if the speed limit is set at 15 miles per hour, if people were to do the speed of 15 miles per hour in a school zone, the reaction time for somebody to slow down is much better than if they were doing 40 miles per hour. The reaction time it takes a longer to slow that vehicle down. At 15 miles per hour or even 20 miles per hour, the reaction times are better. The lower you go, the reaction time naturally is going to be better to abruptly stop. Other factors can include whether an individual is paying attention to what they're doing. If they're distracted, of course, that's going to compromise your reaction time. If you're on the phone, that compromises reaction times, things like that. So there's so many variables, but having a lower speed limit naturally is a good idea. Teaching pedestrians to look both ways, to cross safely, are all good ideas. They're great practices to have. There's nothing wrong with having lower speed limits, besides you maybe not getting to your location fast enough.
Oh, that was my next point. Thank you for sharing your opinion on that. And in areas, and I have specifically, again, in City Palisades, there's one way in, one way out, Mililani Malka. It does impact. If you're having everybody go 15 miles an hour, then we have to get up as parents 2 hours in advance to get in and out. I mean, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. How can we reasonably and realistically do this to keep everybody safe? But think about, okay, if we choose a speed limit that's really, really low, of course, if they're going 5 miles an hour, it's safer. But what would be realistic to not impact everything else on the roads? Because then we have to go to DTS again and affect the stoplights. And then with DOT, okay, now we have to talk about the exits in and out, because it will cause traffic. And I saw this at the beginning of the school year when the school buses weren't operating, and there were hundreds of cars in the one way in, one way out. And so those are the kinds of things I want to make sure that we look through before we set a limit that, of course, if we had endless amounts of space and everybody could drive at 15 miles an hour, everybody would be safe, but we don't have that on our island.
So just to rebut that, I understand what you're saying, and when my child was going through school. She's in college now, but I always remember sitting in traffic. And the beauty of that is everybody else is sitting in traffic. So having the speed limit of 15 miles an hour is not really going to make a difference because things are just gridlocked. I think the intent of this law is for once school has started and traffic has been alleviated and people can get up to speed on these roadways, we actually want to keep them at a 15 mile an hour speed limit or a 20 mile an hour speed limit or whatever you guys decide. And that is the intent, is not so much just before school when everybody's trying to get that rush in, because realistically the traffic is just terrible then. But it's more for while school is going and after school, after that mad rush is gone, most parents have either picked up or dropped off. That's when I think the intent of this bill will be truly effective.
Fair point, fair point. I appreciate you sharing that, although I may agree to disagree on everybody being okay sitting in traffic. I don't know how you feel about that. I do appreciate you also sharing that it's important to educate, because I think that's going to always be a key factor in everything that we do. Thank you.
It's huge. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Members, any other questions for HPD? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. We'll call upon any testifiers here. Is there anyone in the chambers who'd like to testify on Bill 44? Okay, seeing none, clerks, is there anyone registered remotely or standing by remotely to testify on Bill 44?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, members, we are in discussion.
Chair, sorry, there is one person.
There's one.
Hi, this is Kevin Crumming. The clerk put me in, but I was here to testify on Bill 56.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought.
All right, thank you.
So see you for Bill 56.
All right.
Okay, clerks, is there anyone on this bill?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to discussion. Members, any discussion on this? Vice Chair Kiana.
Thank you again for your leadership on this issue, and I appreciate Chair Waters' amendment. Given that there is the independent provision for 15 miles per hour, which Director Morton alluded to, my preference is to move Bill 44 as is with the 20 miles per hour, knowing that he has the flexibility under the other provision to be able to have 15 miles per hour anywhere, right? I think that that's what the language is for that one. That would be my preference, and it's just because this is, first of all, a significant bill to begin with. And having said that, you know, we can't even begin to fully understand the complexity of where all of the schools are located. I do know for some of my schools, like Kailua Elementary School, it's on a major thoroughfare. And I actually did the drive-by because someone who was making sure that I had my facts available to me asked me to drive 20 miles per hour and 15 miles per hour respectively. And it was a significant difference. So I just think that that's for that school, but I can see that there's a lot of schools elsewhere that are on major thoroughfares. And so I am concerned about maybe going too far at this point in time. That would be my preference.
Okay. Members, any other discussion? Chair Waters.
Thank you. I appreciate the Vice Chair's comments. However, it wasn't clear as to whether or not the director has the ability in Aina Haina to allow for 15 miles an hour. It says here on page 3, 50 miles per hour, any roadway 18 feet in width or less within the city and county of Honolulu. So it only applies where it's 18 feet or less. And actually, may I, with your indulgence, ask Director Morton to clarify that again? Because one of your engineers told me directly that Department of Transportation Services cannot change it to 15 miles an hour in that road that I'm concerned about in Aina Haina.
My staff tells me I have the discretion, assuming that we have a 15-mile-an-hour speed zone.
Okay, do we have a 15-mile-an-hour speed zone?
That would be added in the current version of this bill.
The current version, meaning the...
We don't have it at the...
Knows exactly what road we're talking about because we just talked about this last week.
I go in that shopping center twice a week.
Does he have the ability to make 15 miles an hour at Holy Nativity? Yes or no? I was told no.
Yeah. If it's a safety concern, and that's what vested, I have the power to address safety concerns. I have that discretion. Now, I might have to demonstrate that it's got a safety concern, and we do that through engineering analysis to determine that. But if we determine that there's a safety issue, then that's the rationale for the director to have discretion is public safety.
Okay. Okay, and I can work with you on establishing that there is a public safety concern.
And Director, if you could, sorry, to jump in, I think this will help to elucidate as well. I think on page 2 of all of the versions, subsection F, it talks about whenever the Director of Transportation Services determines, either at the Director's initiative or in response to a written request by a representative of the school, that a roadway within 1,000 feet of a school is utilized by students, et cetera, the Director may post a recommended safe speed thereat. Would this give you that authority at Holy Nativity School and other schools?
I would need to consult on that, but I believe it does. I believe it does. It's a pretty clear language.
And when we say representative of the school, does that mean the principal or the board of trustees or?
It would certainly mean principal in a DOE school. In a private school, we would determine whether it was head of school or what it was, but I don't see that as a big issue.
Yeah, I want to make sure Holy Nativity and other private schools are covered as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So, friendly amendment on page 2, subsection F. So it's not only going to and from the school. The gymnasium is right across the street from the classrooms, and the preschoolers, which are literally 2 feet tall, right, are going back and forth across from the gym and parking lot to the classroom. So can we amend it? And I'll defer to you for the exact language, but something to the effect that it would also apply if they have a problem going from classroom to other classrooms.
No objection.
Okay. Yeah, I would also have no objection to that recommendation. I see Sharon feverishly scribbling here, so I'm sure we can come up with some language that works. Okay, members, any further discussion? Do we need?
Chair?
Yes.
So that would be an oral amendment, but our intent is to move this bill out.
Correct. So I'm going to look at Sharon here. Do we have proposed language that maybe works? Could also do it as an FD if needed. Great. We can do it as discussed. Well, if there's no further discussion, it's the chair's proposal is to amend to a CD2. I'd like to use my CD2, OCS 2024-0930, which has a few cleanup items, including changing the title of section 15-7.1 to say speed restrictions and traffic calming measures. In section 4, it removes the applicability of other work vehicles. This is a plantation era ordinance. And in section, the third thing that my proposed CD2 as posted would do is remove the language about the railroad that once ran across Waikimilo Road. There currently is no such railroad, and the railroad that we are building goes above Waikimila Road, and there's no need to stop for it. We'll use that as a basis, and then we'll also include the proposal as discussed from Chair Waters to address the situation of students walking to and from classrooms within their campus. Members, any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Any objections or reservations to that recommendation?
Reservations.
Noting the reservations of Councilmember Okimoto. It's so ordered. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3, Bill 56. This bill will address the use of pedestrian malls and amend sections 13-10.1 and 13-10.2 of the revised ordinances of Honolulu 2021. We have with us Director. Correct. Good catch. Sorry, we're going to go. So the bill has been amended to a CD2. This is back to Bill 44. The chair then recommends that Bill 44, 2024 CD2 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any objections? Any reservations to passing it out for third reading? Noting reservations from Councilmember Okimoto. So ordered. Okay, now on to agenda item number 3, Bill 56, which was already explained. We have Director Morton.
This bill would transfer the jurisdiction of 2 downtown malls to DTS, and we're in support of the bill. This would allow us to have more flexibility in what we permit into what are now considered parklands. The malls are under the jurisdiction of the parks. Jurisdiction would switch to the 2 malls would be under the jurisdiction of the department. Notably, we can permit liquor activities within our departmental rules, which Parks is not allowed to do. I would note that there are 7 downtown malls, of which the bill has 2 malls listed. Neither Parks nor DTS would object to having more of the downtown parks, and some of them are parks that have been discussed as having potential for events. If we did do this, then Parks and Parks representatives are here too, but Parks and DTS would enter into a memorandum of understanding that would allow for Parks to continue to do the excellent maintenance that they do on a daily basis to the malls, so that we would look toward taking over the permitting responsibilities, which I think would also simplify it for the public as well. And we would, Parks is agreeable to continue to maintain the parks.
Okay, members, any questions for the administration? Okay, seeing none, why don't we move on to testimony on this? We have registered testimony from Kevin, well, actually we have registered from Kevin Crummy and then Ben Dukchitra. We have Ben here. I saw Kevin online, so Ben?
All right, good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Ben Dukchitra. I'm Chief Investment Officer of Avalon Group. I'm speaking on behalf of Avalon Group in support of this bill. We are a downtown company. Kristen Camp founded our company 25 years ago as just a one-person company, and since then we've grown to 40 people. We've been downtown the whole time, from renting an office in Davies Pacific Center to now owning the building and various other buildings, including the former Walmart, Macy's, Liberty House building, which is on Fort Street Mall. We strongly support this bill because it makes things easier for all of us in the community to revitalize downtown, to bring it back from COVID, to transform it into 365-day, 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week community, and to help the businesses downtown that are struggling right now. We heard testimony on Bill 50 about all the local businesses that are struggling to find a new equilibrium, and so this will be part of that. Just quickly mention things like walking your dog technically on these malls as a park is illegal. So this will streamline the process, make things easier for all of us to do what we want to do in terms of bringing more life and activity and support to the businesses and residents downtown. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, hearing none, is there anyone else in the chamber who'd like to testify on this matter? All right, if there's anyone else following Angela Melody Young, please line up. Angela, please proceed. You have 1 minute.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES. So if the goal is to activate the neighborhoods in downtown with this ordinance, right? Idealistically, if the ordinance is enacted, then this law in essence guarantees the revitalization and the activities in the community in downtown. So the law delegates as a rule an office to create and to facilitate activity. Yet, if one were to propose that there could be businesses that you'd need to work with and community organizations that you'd need to work with, for example, with events and music, Hawaii Theater, and bars and clubs and those restaurants, right? Beyond the law, I think that the goal to get to activating downtown can be met if we go above and beyond the rule.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none and seeing no further testimony in person, we'll move to Kevin Crummy, who's registered online.
Aloha again. Thank you for having me here, Chairman Dos Santos and Vice Chair Cordero and members of the committee. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of Douglas Emmett, and I'm appearing before you to express my support for Bill 56. We invested about $100 million to convert 1132 Bishop, what we call Bishop Place, into the residences at Bishop Place, a 500-unit workforce housing project. We also own Bishop Square and Harbor Court. We're very interested in the revitalization of downtown. Bishop Place is on Union Mall and 4th Street Mall, and it's subject to restrictions on use limitations such as alfresco dining. And Bill 56 would activate these malls and help revitalize the neighborhood, which we're all in favor of. So I want to thank the chair for introducing this measure and ask for the committee's favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none, clerks, is there anyone else standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, there being none, members, we are in discussion. Members, I want to thank you for entertaining this measure. Downtown revitalization is a big theme of mine, and I want to also thank DTS and Department of Parks and Recreation for working together on this with the mayor's leadership, because I know that's very important to him as well. We passed a resolution asking the mayor to move jurisdiction on his own, but this would conform the ordinances that underlie that. So, any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, the chair recommends that Bill 56 of 2024 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any objections or reservations? Okay, hearing none, so ordered. This brings us to the last item on our agenda. This is an update by DTS on the city's electric bike working group. And this is just an update.
For the record, Roger Morton again from the Department of Transportation Services. We took the lead in setting up a working group that would take a look at the proliferating number of e-mobility type devices on the streets. Our membership of the group that we set up includes DTS as the lead, also includes the Honolulu Police Department, Emergency Medical Services Department, Corporation Council, Customer Service Department, that's DMV, CCSR, various staff from City Council, a representative from the Hawaii Department of Transportation and the Hawaii Bicycling League. We've had one meeting so far, and in our first meeting, a little bit of a recap. EMS did a recap of how many crashes that we've had for the first year. That would be basically first 9 months of the year. We had 180 e-bike crashes, which is a high number of crashes for 9 months at a time. We had a presentation by our Hawaii Bicycling League, and we reviewed the current definitions of e-bikes and the various definitions as a number of e-bikes have done that. We asked all of the participants, and there were quite a few, to make an opening statement of what they saw as the issue, what they saw as potential things that could be done that would improve the situation, and that was that. As part of the meeting, we asked everyone to identify their top issues and what we were doing as a working group, and we came up with 6. We came up with trying to harmonize and come to grips with what helmet laws were for these new devices. Right now, they vary from 16 to 18 years of age when you have to wear a helmet. The group is toying with the idea of making all devices uniform, that all devices would have to be 18 or older, 18 or younger, would require a helmet use. We also took a look at definitions of the various devices, and this has been a part that both the media and general public, treats some of these devices as somewhat similar. There's class 1, class 2, class 3 devices, which are what we call really our classical e-bikes. Class 1 is a bike that will not go more than 20 miles per hour and does not have a throttle. It has pedals, and it's a pedal assist vehicle. Class 2 is a 20-mile-an-hour vehicle, but it has a throttle. And class 3 is a 28-mile-per-hour vehicle. Those all fit the definition of e-bikes. But then there are other vehicles too. Some of them might be classified as electric dirt bikes or even electric motorcycles that frankly are not, right now, they're not able to be licensed for use on roadways. And some of these devices will go, up to 70 miles per hour and are very different from the other types of e-bikes. So one of the things that the working group will try to do is try to define the different types of devices, including what we're beginning to call the out-of-class devices, the ones that are higher speed, and we'll take a look at licensing requirements. Another issue for the group is to really determine where is it appropriate to operate these new types of electric vehicles. They're not allowed to be operated on sidewalks under the current law, but looking at whether a multi-use path is appropriate or whether a bike path or a bike lane is appropriate. Those are issues that really aren't defined, and we're going to try to define them and make it clear that where these vehicles can be operated legally. The age requirement is another issue, again, for the Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 devices. There's a requirement that you must be 15 years of age or older. In some cases, some states treat the Class 1s differently than the Class 2s or the Class 3s, and we're going to continue to look at those issues. Another one that we are looking at is rider behavior. That's issues such as issues related to speed and to reckless driving, such as wheelies, reckless behaviors, and packing of multiple vehicles. Those are issues that we see all the time. We all see them on the street, but they're not really, there's kind of a gray area in our ordinances and in our revised statutes. A fifth area that we're looking at is in the area of what type of vehicles should be registered, and whether or not we should have a change in our registration laws for some of the vehicles. And a sixth portion that we're looking at is the area of education and parental responsibility. There was a discussion about the need for increased information about what the laws actually are, particularly looking at our keiki, at our younger children. We see 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds that are getting cited for illegal operation of the vehicles. And in some cases, I think that we need to do a better job of educating parents and others over what are the laws and what we can work with. We have We've had one meeting so far, but we have other meetings that we're planning. We have a meeting on Thursday, our second meeting of our working group. We have reserved October 29th at 9 a.m. where we will host an industry day, and we've invited people that are involved in this industry of selling vehicles or renting them to come and have their thoughts with us. We are also planning a virtual public meeting on November 14th, where we're going to invite the public to come in and express their opinions on these new devices. We'll be back before council on November 9th. Let me see. We have our third meeting, on November 8th, our third working group meeting. We have one on Thursday and another one on November the 8th. We are committed to trying to provide some type of recommendations by the time you have your November 19th Transportation Committee meeting, and hopefully, a reasonable time in advance of that, so members will have an opportunity to digest what the recommendations are. On the state side, our State of Hawaii Department of Transportation has indicated to me that they're also planning to make recommendations for changes in state law, and we've tried to commit to them too that by mid-November that we would be in a position to talk to our state partners too about what this working group has come up with. Your final council meeting is December 11th of this year, and we're trying to get this information positioned before the council so that by your final meeting you would be able to take final action on the bill, if any, on the bill. Other agencies that have some stakeholder in this include the Department of Parks and Recreation, include the Department of Education, the prosecuting attorney, the state judiciary, and our neighbor island counties. But we are committed to trying to come up with some recommendations for ordinance, and also perhaps some recommendations for statewide implementation within our statutes. That's a recap of where we are right now. Happy to answer any questions, and thanks everybody for participating in that too.
Thank you. Members, any questions? I'm going to go to committee members first. So Councilmember Tupola.
I just want to say thank you, Director. It sounds thorough. Your approach with the industry day as well as with different government agencies is excellent. My question is, who is taking notes during this meeting, and how can we see that? I know auditorially you gave the update, but I'm just a person that likes to read things too and see it with my own eyes.
In our first meeting, we had one of my staff, Renee, take notes and to put up little stickies on the wall where we all made comments, and then we recapped those and made a summary of what those were, and I'd be happy to share those with you.
Yeah, when you think it's appropriate, as we approach actually implementing the law, I think it's going to be great for transparency, for the public to see how well thought out all of this was, how many people were involved, how we came to the conclusion that this was the best path forward. So I commend you. Thank you for always being here and being thorough in the work that you do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Director Martin again. In your meetings, and thank you for putting this working group together, you mentioned that you had the stakeholders and there's from the state as well. So they're meeting and you guys are talking about legislation that is going to be presented on what they will implement. Is that what I understood?
Well, we would make recommendations to the State Department of Transportation, or rather, the result of the working group would include some recommendations. And I've had discussions with the director over their timetable for putting together legislative packages for them. They intend to put some through. They participate in our group, but they are the State Department of Transportation, so they will make their own decisions. But they're listening to, because we have the various groups together, we're trying to do it in an organized way. They are interested in participating with us. I wish I had a way to participate better with the neighbor islands as well, but I'll leave that to our state partners to try to work with the counties.
Thank you. I was just curious to know, we had a resolution pass the council 24-199, and I know council members the Santos-Tam and Tupola also have a bill, an ordinance going through. So in the result that I was able to introduce, we had specifics in there of what we wanted, and you mentioned the classes and kind of, what we're suggesting. Are those things part of the discussion in what you guys are working on with the state?
The state participates in the working group like any other member of the working group. And so far, we've left our discussions at that level as a member of the working group. I know that the director is watching and has the staff reporting to him. And we've discussed it a little bit. But so far, this is collaborative operation where we are we're trying to bring together all the people that are stakeholders in this, whether they are industry people or whether they're beaky bike rentals or all the different people in our community that are involved in these e-bikes. I don't know what the result of the working group will be. And the more I'm there, the more complicated it does become. That, there are always competing issues in any type of group.
Thank you. And you had the deadline for your goal of November 19th to provide things to this committee. And we're, again, the resolution that I put forward last month or a month or so ago, and as well as the ordinance that's going through right now, I know the goal is that we have something before session starts on the legislative side in January. So is that still the timeline that you're working with?
Yeah, in discussions with the Director of Transportation for the state, we've agreed upon mid-November as their basic drop dead date for them to receive something from us that they could consider and possibly incorporate in going forward. But they've told me they recognize this as a statewide issue as well.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Councilmember Say.
So Director Morton, just one question. How can we help you in coming up with a revenue source for this new program? How can we help you in coming up with a new revenue source for this particular program?
The options for revenue usually are registration fees. I don't know whether we are advocating any change in those fees, but those are usually the bicycle fees, the moped fees, the e-bike fees for registration go into the bike fund, and that does help us with our bicycle programs, which would include developing additional facilities. We've put a lot of emphasis at the department in trying to maximize federal funding as well for bicycle facilities on Oahu. And we are looking to do what we can to provide safe access routes where we can. We got a lot of things going on. We have our Alapono Bridge. We have various complete street projects. We have our South Shore bike plan. Hopefully at some point we'll do a North Shore bike plan, maybe in the future. But all of those do take money. So far, with the IIJA, we have been able to receive a lot of federal dollars to help us get our local stuff done.
Okay, would you consider the e-bikes, e-scooters a vehicle? Because I'm just trying to get this coordination that if it is a vehicle, why don't we just go and see Division of Motor Vehicle? They do the vehicle weight tax. And based on the vehicle tax, based on the weight of that particular vehicle from what you said, off bike or mountain bikes, 20 miles plus, etc., you get a different rate, revenue source that you could consider using. That's all I'm saying, because your department, your budget as DTS is really, for me, strapped with our general fund side monies. That's all. Just trying to find some resources on behalf of the members.
Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, to that point, there's probably an opportunity, not through this bill, but maybe in a different vehicle, to look at some of the registration fees and some of the plates and things. Some of them are as low as 50 cents, which costs us more to mail somebody a new tag in postage than we collect in the 50-cent fee.
Yeah, at this point, we just do new registration fees. We don't do annual fees on bicycles at this point.
All right, members, any other questions? Well, Director, I want to thank you for coming out here. I think every one of us all throughout our districts have seen just sad stories about e-bike crashes, about people being injured, about kids being injured. And, I think we need to do something. It's abundantly clear that we need to do something. And so I really appreciate your work and the working group coming together to deliberate on all of these points. I look forward to having something out by the end of the year. As we know, a lot of kids are going to get e-bikes for Christmas. We also know they're not toys. These are serious devices, and we need some clear regulation that's enforceable and understandable. So I want to appreciate you and your team for putting this together and continuing to do the work, and I look forward to having your recommendations in before our next committee hearing.
Thank you.
All right, with that, seeing that there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned. It's 4:26. Oh, sorry, we need to do testimony. Okay. Angela, welcome. And that's right, and we actually have another testifier as well. So Angela, please proceed.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young, testifying on behalf of CARES. So adults, teachers, parents, and community organizers to teach the kids about the laws and public policies relating to safety on roadways, and to organize at facilities such as schools to hold demonstrations like the one from Ilima Middle School. So when there are offenses, it's usually because people did not know what the rules are. And so just an idea that the Honolulu County should copy California's mandate to make sure it can withstand the mandate. And California's e-bike laws are similar to those for traditional bicycles. You must be at least 16 to ride a Class 3 e-bike, and all riders who are minors and are under 18 must wear protective gear. And in California, you don't need a license or registration to ride an e-bike. So also rules of the road in California, you must follow the California Vehicle Code, CVC, which includes obeying traffic lights and signs and going with the flow of traffic. And for passing, cars must give e-bikes at least 3 feet clearance when passing. E-bikes can ride in the bicycle lane if permitted by local authorities. And for modifications, you can't modify an e-bike speed unless you also modify the classification label, and e-bikes are subject to different rules on different bike paths and lanes. And for labels, e-bike companies must list the bike's top speed and design on a label. So I think this will be a really fun discussion for students and parents and community organizers, and the community policing team can get involved as well to do training.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for the testifier? Okay, seeing none. We also have Alvin Yoshinaga, who's been waiting patiently, and I'm sorry I was so excited to wrap up the hearing, but we'll get to you. If you could press the button on the right side of the base, and the light should come on. There we go.
All right.
Yeah.
Actually, the Director of Transportation I didn't introduce myself. I'm a longtime bike commuter since 1980. Nowadays, my normal route is around central Oahu, mostly along the King Street and the Pensacola bike routes. Now, the Director of Transportation made most of the points that I wanted to bring up, so I just wanted to add some observations. One, that pedal-powered bicycles like I use are now a minority of the devices that I see on the bike routes. And I say devices, not bicycles, because in fact, of the remaining things on the bike routes, besides electric bicycles, as the director pointed out, there are all kinds of other things like electric skateboards, there are electric all sorts of things, and there are things that are not electric, like skateboards and scooters. So any kind of regulation that you come up with is going to have to cover all of these diverse devices, plus devices that have not yet come out. So I hope that this regulation will be not so device specific as it not to be able to address new things as they come up.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? And if you could read your name into the record really quick and state your name at the microphone.
All right, name is Alvin Yoshinaga.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yoshinaga. Any members, any questions? All right, is there anyone else here in the chamber who'd like to testify? Clerks, is there anyone standing by remotely to testify?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none now, now we're actually done with our agenda. Thank you everyone for being here today. There being no further business now, the meeting's adjourned. It's 4:30. Thank you.